All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome back. I'm here again with my man Moose.
How's it going?
Um, Hope everyone out there is doing good and moving forward in their lives and making this experience here on the third dimension on planet Earth as sweet as possible. So, a topic that's just been coming up over the last week more than once was the topic of surrender. So we thought we'd give tonight's couple hours or however long to talk about the concept of surrender and what it means, and kind of put it into context of changing your lives or creating things that you want. So, for me personally, when I when I hear the word surrender, when we're talking about consciousness or becoming awareness or just kind of making changes in your life, I think surrender is one of those requirements to where in order for you to change anything in your life, you kind of have to surrender the old you or the ego or how you used to present yourself to the world in order to advance forward and find something new. You're sort of clearing out space, the old space, to make space for something new to happen in your life. So let me just ask you, Moose, when you hear the word surrender, what does it mean to you?
I think it's obviously extremely important. It comes up everywhere. You hear it at every AA meeting or rehab facility or any sort of correction facility, or even just within friends and family and giving advice. You always hear that you need to surrender. And for the longest time, I didn't really understood what it meant. I've heard it across the board through so many different instances, and always thought, oh, okay, so I'll surrender, but never really truly did. And
Right. Like you said, I think it's important to understand what you're surrendering and why.
Right.
And I think most people, go about their lives and they don't even think about it until they get stuck somewhere. Mm-hmm. Or at one point in their life, they realize that the way they're living their lives, their habits aren't benefiting them.
Right.
And they know that they need change in their lives, but like in order for change to occur, all those things have to change, all the habits, all the thought processes and things like that. And in order for change to occur, you kind of have to kill that stuff off. And I think that's a requirement. It would be to surrender all of that. And I think most
right.
of it kind of centers around the ego, don't you?
Well, that's my point exactly. Is people want to I personally, wanted to cherry pick, what I surrendered. And then would only, choose to do half of whatever. And, I would get somewhere, but then a month would go by and I end up back, at square one, or I learned my lesson, but somewhat, and I didn't really truly give it the actual 100% surrender where you just allow change to occur and draw positivity and good change towards yourself instead of remaining in past programs due to cherry picking surrender.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I mean, when you're in the process of transforming yourself and changing your lives and trying to manifest a better life for yourself, it's tough. But one of the hardest parts is depending on your age. Like I'm in my 50s. You've kind of presented to the world this version of yourself who you want to present to the world, whether it's your authentic self or not. Usually it's not your authentic self, but it's something your ego has formulated to where you can present this person to the world to where you get likability.
Right.
You can get a job. It's almost like role playing.
It's a facade.
Yeah, and like when you reach a point where that's not working anymore and you have to make changes, I mean, obviously you would have to surrender that. And basically what we're talking about is somebody that would need to surrender their identity, like who they've known themselves as probably since they were little kids. You know, you develop a specific identity, whether you're an artist or a politician or a lawyer. That, you know, that's just this role you play, but it's probably deep down not really who you are. And you know, in order to change, you got to get really familiar with your authentic self. And I think that's a scary prospect for a lot of people. And surrender also requires like stepping into a very uncomfortable, unknown situation where you're not even familiar with yourself anymore, and it can be scary. So I think surrender is a tough thing for a lot of people.
Well, absolutely, it's a tough thing, and for myself included. You know, it's for everybody across the board. Doesn't matter who you are, to 100% decide to choose to change. You know, you have to be sitting and living in an uncomfortable environment for long enough, and the uncomfortability of that has to finally outweigh, you know, your situation for you to want to surrender and change. And I think in order to, most people have to hit that rock bottom, have to be that.
I was just going to say that. Exactly.
Before change happens. So, you know, surrender is not a comfortable thing. Absolutely not. It is an uncomfortable thing. You become painfully aware of who you are. You become painfully aware of the things that you don't like about yourself. This person, this facade you've put on for so many people for so many years isn't who you really are. And it's no longer working for you. And that's a painful process. You know, it causes confusion in the mind. It causes biological shifts inside your body. It really affects you all the way down up to a subatomic level. And in order for real change to happen, you know, that's the level it has to go to for you to change. And, you know,
yeah, no, I agree with all of that. You know, and it's interesting. People really don't change or start to become aware of who they are until a crisis situation or until, like you said, rock bottom.
mm-hmm.
What that says to me about people facing the possibility of surrendering is most people don't want to do it. It's almost like they're forced into it. They're
right.
at the lowest possible point they can be, so there's nothing else but to surrender.
Right.
And if people don't hit a rock bottom, they don't really go down that path to surrender.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an interesting, you know, question too, is why do people wait so long? And I think you answered it. There's a lot of fear involved of what you might find out about yourself,
yeah.
and what you might not be okay with. And you know, the other thing is say you're 40 years old and you go down this path, you surrender and you start becoming familiar with your authentic self, and you realize you've never even known yourself, and it could be a really terrifying process. And it's like you look back going, I've spent 40 years on this planet as something or somebody. I have no idea what I created in my ego to become this.
Yeah.
And it's probably out of survival. You know, I need to make money, so I'm going to be a doctor. It's not really who you are, though. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. You know, living multiple walks of life, that's how I like to put it, because as you're a kid in your adolescence, you know, you're this whatever you were in school, and then you shift into like high school and you're this other person, you know, and then you get out and wherever you decide to go into adult life, you know, you change that person again, and it's whatever works for you in that time frame. But you know, as you go through it, people experience life differently. They, like you said, are unaware, so they walk all these different paths of life and go through all these different changes completely unaware. So they're not surrendering, but they're just floating along in the program.
It sounds, yeah, it's a very chameleon like lifestyle,
right?
And it's almost like what we're describing is survival mode.
Right.
Like you can adapt and change. Your ego can adapt and change to suit whatever environment to get you through that. Like in high school,
mm-hmm.
high school's a bitch for a lot of people.
Right.
You can get bullied and this and that. So that's where kids, okay, I better become a jock, or you know, I have to become a popular person.
Well, what about the popular person who was just innately popular from the get-go? What facade are they putting on? Because they're already the popular person.
And I think that goes back to your parents and your upbringing. You know, maybe your parents engineered that
Yeah.
for your own safety in high school, because, you know, if you're
What
not,
if you engineered that yourself through moving? Like, let's say kids change schools and create a new identity for themselves at a new school.
I would say that that is very common, because I mean, we've all been to schools and a new kid shows up. That's a terrifying thing, because all eyes are on that kid,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone's trying to suss that kid out in a judgmental way. Like,
Right.
what clique is he or she gonna fall into?
Mm-hmm.
Is he an emo kid? Is he gonna be an athlete? Is she gonna be a cheerleader?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, from my experience in high school, I was more of an athlete, and I think I did it to survive, so I wouldn't
Myself
get
as well.
bullied, and you know, and that was the role I played. I mean, I was good at sports, but there was so much more to me
Mm-hmm.
that I just kind of shelved away, because I was afraid the other athletes would, like, I was an artist, and you know, and a
Right.
skateboarder and all that stuff. And in my day in the '80s, the jocks didn't like it. The jocks beat the shit out of the skaters,
Yeah.
and the artists were geeks or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was every bit that, but like, I played the athlete role so I could survive high school, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
it was simply role playing, and you get, once you get positive reinforcement from it, you get good at it, and people accept that. That's, I think that's when it kind of homogenizes, and and now it's, you're like going, okay, I'm getting positive feedback for this guy,
Right.
and then now you just kind of becomes more concrete, and you're going, okay, I'm gonna play this role for as long as I can, because it's working.
Yeah.
You know
For
what I
as
mean?
long as I can. And so.
And I don't care if it's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surviving. I'm getting attention. I'm getting dates or girlfriends, and
Right.
you know, being invited to parties. I'm gonna play this role.
Right. So that bodes the question for the popular person who's gone through and put themselves, or the athletic person who can skate by life for, an extended period of time. Um, Basically, there's no time limit on when you can surrender. Like, being this popular kid in person and being an athletic, being able to let that take you into life and all over the world and this and that and the other before becoming, doing what it is you're doing now, versus, back then and living in survival. Everything's different now. Like,
So that's an good point there. So it would be safe to say that people run from surrendering.
mm-hmm.
You know, they're escaping from it, because that's kind of how life shifting and how monumental surrender is. Because once you go down that hole, like with anything else in consciousness, you can't go back. So you go down that hole and you don't like what you see, you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you have to be okay with, okay, everyone knew me as this athlete or whatever, and I'm not even close to it. And now I have to present myself to the world,
Mm-hmm.
which is someone completely different. Now you're losing peer groups.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people maybe don't trust you as much. You know how our society is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he just went crazy. You know, because
Yeah.
he's not a different person. Someone will put a label on you.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that there's that you got to fight too. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it takes a lot of courage to surrender. I mean, that's a key component as well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's the exact point of what I was thinking is, no matter, because I was that same person,
Me too. It
I
makes
did
me
all that.
think, who wasn't?
And I think about like how long I went unconscious before I decided to surrender. Like, it was a long time. A long time, and then now looking back on that, I'm like, in hindsight, it's just like, fuck, who was that guy? Like, or what the fuck was I thinking? And like, I know I can remember like shit from back then, but it's just like,
It just wasn't really you. The more
Right.
you're in touch with,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
And then coming to terms with that is like, there's a lot of cringy shit that was like happened or whatever, and you just gotta shake hands with the person inside of you, all that shit that, and just let it go and surrender.
Yeah, I mean, sooner or later, you can never run from the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sooner or later, it could be for some people their 30s, some people their 60s or 70s.
Right.
But sooner or later, you're going to end up face to face with who you really are. You just can't fight it, you know, and you can't be that unconscious for that long, or maybe you can. But
you can. Some people might not find it till their deathbed.
Right, but I think there's the way the universe works. In my opinion, there's certain events that happen in your life where the universe causes you to look within and reflect and go, okay, the gig is up. No more phony identity.
The universe is calling you out of your shit.
You're a loving divine being. There's nothing to really run from it or be afraid of. It's just going to be completely different from who you thought you were.
Right.
And that's the unknown. It's very terrifying. It takes a lot of courage. And it's not a quick hit either. It's a journey. So, you know, once you surrender, you know, if you're willing to want to make changes in your life is forever altered too. And that's another thing to come to terms with.
Exactly. Like you said, there's no turning back. Once you start on the path, you know, you can stop, you know, like you said, but then you're kind of stuck. Like, at least this is what happened in my experience, was trying to cherry pick, got stuck, you know, learned a thing or two, and then the universe just throws the same lesson back in my face.
Tried to fake your way through it.
Trying to fake my way through it.
Something like, I'm guilty of the same stuff.
Yeah, and then the universe just puts the same problem right back in front of me.
Exactly.
And then I'm
nowhere to run.
Yeah, nowhere to run.
Sorry, you can go back to the starting line. You're not getting it.
Yep.
You know, and you know that I'm a firm believer. Like, you know, and it's hard, but why wait till you know, a crisis situation or rock bottom? But we've just defined why everyone waits. It's a pretty profound element in people's lives. I mean, the one constant in this universe is change, and that happens with everyone. And you could fight it all you want, but sooner or later you're going to change. I don't think that's the same as evolving consciously, but you are a different person year after year.
Right. I agree with that. You're not evolving consciously, but you're exactly. I 100% agree with that.
You're a different person. It's not the same as being aware or being more conscious or, you know, being more connected spiritually. It is not the same thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying with the walking different paths of lives and just remaining unconsciously. The whole thing is, it blows me away to think that that's how long I lived, or, you know, before I like realized or really self-reflected, which is probably the scariest thing. Like I said, and I started cherry picking, but what I'm coming to realize and what I want others to know is, you know, don't stop. Why stop? Like, once you get to that point, then you get stuck. So it's like, well, shit, now, excuse my language. Now it's like, what do I got to do to continue this growth, or make it to at least the end game goal where, like, I'm not getting stuck with this continuous problem in my face every day, and then you just deal with it and then grow from it and move forward. So, like, why wouldn't you stop?
Right. I think that's where
or why would you stop? Excuse me.
Right. I think that's where, like, an inner belief, a faith, you know, you know, at some point you really have to just accept who you are and love yourself and take the plunge, you know. Otherwise, you know, you either stop in your tracks, but, you know, and most people will revert back to what works for them. They'll go back into survival instead of creation. That's the easiest thing for them to do because it's familiar.
Comfortability.
Right. So, you know, I see people that, like, definitely maybe might be stuck in their life somewhere, and from what in my opinion, from what I've seen, you know, just from the people that I know, is I think a lot of people are just kind of, they found a comfort zone, and they're neither happy nor sad, but they're safe, so they're not gonna surrender.
Complacent.
They found a little zone where they're safe, you know what I mean? And they're not growing, they're not evolving, they're not becoming more conscious, but they're not dying, you know? They're getting their way through life. And I think people, you know, it's the same thing like when we talk about meditation, they hear that word and it's like, that there's a requirement of change there. You know, I'm not happy, but I'm not sad. I think I'm just gonna ride out my whole life in this little comfort zone. And in my opinion, that's existing. That's not living a life. You're just existing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, everyone has this unlimited potential. You're really wasting your life and selling yourself short just simply by not having the courage to experiment, to find out, to have the and the curiosity. You know what I mean?
And the curiosity.
You know what I mean? And
I do.
It's all terrifying because you're faced with basically the truth and your authentic self, and you have to be okay with that. And everyone is a divine loving being at birth. I mean, that's essentially who we are. We've just been kind of programmed, and our egos take over and develop these false identities and things like that. But like, I don't really think there's any reason for anybody to not look in the mirror and really love and appreciate who they are once they understand who they are authentically.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because like for me, I don't really look in mirrors, but I couldn't look myself in the mirror as some phony guy. I demand that authenticity now, and I've been, really working on myself for years now. And I would much rather look in the mirror and just go, man, I accept who you are and I really love who you are, rather than go, oh man, you're rich and famous, you got a bunch of Lamborghinis in the garage, but you're a complete shell of it. You're just you're a veneer. There's just no substance to you because you're not connected with your authentic self. Like, I couldn't look myself in the mirror.
It's tough.
As that, you know what I mean?
Exactly. That's a wonderful and very interesting thought, is to look at yourself in the mirror. How many times everybody does it every single day, but do they really look in the mirror? Are they actually, and they're not, and I'm very guilty of this as well. But it's a trippy analogy because, we all do it every single day.
Yeah, I mean, people look in the mirror on a really shallow subsurface physical level, but like, connect your eyes with the eyes in the mirror and look deep into who you are. That's probably pretty scary for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Myself included. And I like to think that I'm way past that. But let's talk about like the surrender process. Like, at what point is we talked about rock bottom, but and you brought up a good point with like AA. Whoever's ever been in Alcoholics Anonymous knows that the very first step is admitting that you're an alcoholic. That in itself is a form of surrender. You got to give up that. You got to own it. You got to admit it.
And this is also for NA or CMA or
correct.
Any one of those.
You have to come clean right now, or this process is dead in its tracks. So, sequentially, I think, like, if anybody's out there is looking to make a change in their life, or, becoming more aware or more conscious of what's going on around them, wouldn't you think it's safe to say that surrender would be one of the first steps if you really wanted to make a profound change in your life?
Absolutely. Surrender is the first step. And the most important step. Like, if without surrender, without allowing yourself to actually change, you never will. You can't beat around the bush or dip your toe in the shallow end. There is none of that. It's head first. You're diving in. There's a certain sense of commitment that has to happen along with it. There's a level of mental drive and perseverance that you kind of have to fully allow yourself to do this. So hitting rock bottom and making it through that, and after being and realizing and becoming aware of that, and then making these 100% coherent thoughts and decisions within inside of yourself is like the most important step. And then continuously, like you said, having that belief and faith, and to hold on to that faith as long as possible, and don't ever stop it. It doesn't go away because you start reinforcing the idea of what is working, surrendering and change, and allowing yourself to change, and letting it happen to you authentically through positive energy into the universe will draw it to you. And once there's that belief system in place, then you know, you're light years ahead of everybody around and within inside of yourself too, just from where you were before you started the process. And then I think noticing change is what keeps people doing it, but you notice the change, but
the awareness, yeah.
Like I said, though, it's painful. Like I said, it's consistent, at least for myself, every couple of like lessons, it's yeah, that one I
feel like you're starting over again.
Yeah.
But there's a new lesson though.
Exactly.
Like a new chapter.
Or that lesson might kind of hit a little too close to home, and it's like, all right, you got to deal with that. And then you try not to. And then it back in your face a week later, and then you try not to, and then it's in your face a week later.
And that's the process, because when now you're fighting, which means you haven't surrendered yet.
Yep. And then you let it go, and it's
the old you creeps back in.
Yeah.
That you haven't fully surrendered. One thing I just wanted to say real quick, so there's no misunderstandings here. When we're talking about surrender, Moose and I are not talking about giving up on your life. No. And in fact, I think it's the opposite. It's not. We're not telling you to quit on your life. We're talking about surrendering the things, the ego specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
The things that don't benefit you. You have to at least acknowledge that, like your life, your way isn't working, and you need to surrender that. We're not talking about just giving up on life.
Yeah, it's the negative feelings. It's all the stuff that's wrapped around what's holding you back from moving forwards. Is getting yourself out of your own way. It's surrendering that person that's in your way, and it's yourself. So it's.
I would see it as a gift then, if you have the power and the courageousness to do it.
I can get behind that. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But Moose and I have talked a lot about people looking for end goals compared to the journey. I mean, this is also like meditation or consciousness, whatever you want to call it. It's a journey, so you're not looking for like a finish line or an end goal or an answer to the equation. It's kind of becomes your life. It's a lifelong practice. It's what you become.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if you're thinking you're going to just surrender and in a couple weeks you'll be a different person, that's just not how it goes.
Nope.
It requires, like Joe said, the whole point of surrender is to get your ego, get all your baggage, all your negative thoughts, your belief system, all your bad habits out of the way. In order for the universe to give you what you want in life, it has to clear out the closet.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be cleared out. There needs to be space in order for new things and new changes to happen in your life. And it all starts with the ego. And when we're talking about surrender, we're mostly focusing on surrendering, breaking the habit of being yourself, surrendering your ego, however you guys want to look at it. But most people's biggest hurdle or obstacle in their life is themselves. It's their own ego.
Mm-hmm.
And you really need to acknowledge that straight from the get-go. And this holds true, I think, also for people that like we believe or perceive to be happy and successful in society. None of us really know what's going on in their heads.
Right.
It's not a monetary thing. Our culture tends to look at the wealthy as the happy, healthy, they've got everything. They must have this beautiful life and close family and all this stuff. But I would venture to say that, if you really got into their head and understood what they were thinking, it was probably not even close to that.
Right. Yeah, you never know what's going on in anybody's life. So just to throw that out there, always be kind.
Yeah. No judgment.
No judgment, and no judgment upon yourself, especially during this process, because you will find things about yourself that you don't like, and be okay with that. No judgment. You are your own worst critic, and it is a.
That's a really good point, Moose, because part of surrender, part of this whole process, is forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And no judgment. Like none of that's the old you. That doesn't benefit you. Like nobody's perfect. We've all made mistakes, and that isn't even the present moment. That's the past. You know what I mean?
It doesn't exist anymore.
It no longer exists. It only exists in your thoughts that you keep running around and around in a vicious cycle every day. It's not even real.
Yeah.
So
recycling the old you in and out, the old past you, the past thoughts from
and that's
years
all
and
the
years
old
ago.
baggage.
Exactly.
That's what you need to clear out in order to move forward. So you have to forgive yourself unjudgmentally and move forward into the present moment. And so many people from their childhoods carry all that shit through their entire lives with them, and it has to drain your energy. It's got to be tiring. And that's where lies and excuses and victimhood, victim of your environment creeps in. It's all of that stuff that people for some reason can't let go of, and they drag it through their lives. They drag it into their relationships.
Yeah.
They drag it into work, and they wonder why they can't coexist with their fellow workers. They wonder why they're struggling in life, and they just continue to blame other people, and that's the old baggage.
Yeah. That's a very difficult one for most people, I believe.
It's a challenge.
To
no one ever admits they're wrong,
right,
or they made a mistake, and that's rooted
or
in judgmentalism.
What about saying I'm sorry?
I know very many people that I can't even remember them saying I'm sorry,
right,
on a sincere level, because saying I'm sorry is a form of manipulation unless there's change that follows.
Correct.
Otherwise, it's manipulation.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
Empty sorries.
Yeah. There has to be a change of behavior once you say you're sorry in order for it to even matter or be sincere.
So that would be a form of surrender.
It's opening up, yeah.
Yeah, but becoming
admitting
vulnerable,
you were wrong,
admitting you were wrong, and changing something about yourself that you did that affected either someone else if you changed for them or whatever, but that become aware of that little victory, and they add up, and in time you become this new person through those tiny little surrenders, those little battles. They really do affect and add up in a big way once you start becoming aware of it consciously, day in and day out.
Exactly. And Moose brought up another profound component to this, which is vulnerability. We're, at least men in our culture, are taught to be macho and hearts closed, and they're going to be tough guys and this and that, but it's literally impossible to love yourself or love another person with your heart closed, without being vulnerable. And it's a rough world out there. You have to protect yourself, but without vulnerability, how do you establish any kind of deep-rooted relationship with anybody? You really can't.
Well, with anybody. And
or
that's
anything.
The most terrifying thing, because most men walk through life solo, and whether surrounded with family, surrounded with friends, but opening up and telling somebody something personal to you and becoming vulnerable. This happened to me today, and and the person blew right over it and had nothing to say about the subject, about something that's was bothering me, and I was like, right on.
Yeah, I mean, those that are aware, I mean, you can't let it affect you, but the more you're aware of yourself, the more that you become aware of other people's behaviors. And men especially, and I almost feel bad for most men, because they're required to be tough and they can't cry, and there's this macho edge to them, and all that's doing is affecting their lives negatively.
Well, men are only loved conditionally, which is this big thing. But the only people who aren't, are women, children, and dogs.
Right.
And so this is like we said, vulnerability, but men's mental health is a huge problem right now in America.
It really is.
And this is why we provide this platform and are speaking on such a thing, such as surrender. This is because men like that and who struggle with stuff like that need to be okay searching within inside themselves.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear about vulnerability. That's kind of like your soul or your spirit when you're opening up to be vulnerable. We'll call it the inner child.
I like that.
The inner child is that's your soul and your spirit. That's who you authentically want to be. But you also have the other half of you is an adult that has to protect that inner child.
Right.
And you really only want to let out that inner child when you feel safe around loved ones and people that you can trust, because there's always that fear of, that's kind of like a little kid getting his heart stomped on. It can get really damaged. So each person has their soul or their spirit, which is this inner child, but there has to be an adult, the other half of this person, an adult, a responsible adult, to protect that inner child and don't let that inner child out in stressful situations. And I've seen a lot of people that never even matured into adulthood, whether they're 30, 40, 60, 70 years old. It doesn't make you an adult. What makes you an adult is a personal responsibility, mostly to yourself, because once again, if you don't have a personal responsibility, you can't really be responsible to anybody else. And that's when people fall into little role playings,
and stay stuck for years.
Yeah, and I don't even think in our society it's even required to be an adult anymore. I mean, I've just seen some of the behavior out there, and it's basically childish. People don't respond; they react just like children.
Mm-hmm.
They flip you off in traffic. This is not adult behavior,
right.
And it's definitely not compassionate. And if you're going to act like that to other people, you're really a mirrored effect. You act that way to yourself. And I'm sure there's tons of men out there that are just broken inside. But they have to get up every day and put on this, unvulnerable, tough Teflon coating around them to where, nothing hurts them and nothing breaks them, and they don't have any feelings or emotion. That is so unhealthy biologically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's because they actually do feel something inside, and then have to lie to themselves and suppress it and shove it down, and all that hurts, and you just smile through it, and then it just becomes a practice, and then you become addicted to it, and then when you don't get that, you feel weird. And this is another thing about surrender, and those biological changes that come with change inside of yourselves. Those feelings are going to be uncomfortable, but they will go away. You'll learn new ones, and those new ones will be what solidifies that practice and solidifies that change that happens within inside of you.
I find it interesting. It seems to me that most people are more concerned about what other people think of them than what they think of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's a confusing concept for me, because you're not really being very good to yourself. If you're more worried about what people think of you and how you act and dress, more important than how you think of yourself as an authentic person, that says a lot about you as the person, don't you think?
Yeah, I think people are walking displays of how they feel internally, and
so could we call them soulless avatars existing in a programmed matrix?
Yeah, absolutely.
and people would rather be that way than to get in touch with their true feelings.
Well, it's so easy. It's like it starts
from
a young age.
It works.
And it's so exactly, you know what I mean? Like from a young age, everybody's just taught that, you are the victim. Everybody's the fault in that problem, and you lash out and you get what you want, and then you go about your life, and everybody, it's like this society is so different from 30 years ago. There was
totally different world.
Way more men who didn't have as many mental health problems. There was, you had a good career, like you built a family. Like now it's just programming where you have to go straight into a job right out of high school, blah blah blah, and everybody just gets stuck in this is what we have to do, this is what we're supposed to be doing, and not actually living, just following the programming and staying stuck all the way through all of their careers through life.
Yeah, I think like most people miss the point on humanity and what it is to live a life. Like, I kind of grew up in the 70s and 80s, and all of us were raised basically to seek out status, or your parents wanted you to become wealthy. Like, it was all about your career base. Most parents in my day wanted little Johnny, or their kids to be a doctor or a lawyer. They didn't care about whether the kid was happy, but in terms of status in the United States, that was a high status job. But those were the highest paying jobs back then. This was before the internet and all that stuff. But like, those were the jobs, and every parent wanted their kids to be a doctor or a lawyer for financial gain. And they kind of lost track of, like, the child's passion, or what they innately were talented at, or what they wanted to do. It was all just focused straight on financial gain. And I think right from a young age, you're off the tracks, and you're just finding yourself flowing further and further from your authentic self. And I'm in my 50s now, and it's clear to me that when you die, nobody cares how much money you have. What's important is what you can do to your community, how you can serve your community, your family, your inner circle, and mostly giving back. It has nothing to do with money, yet that's the primary goal. For most parents, they're not even really you could say that parents aren't really looking after their kids' true passion or happiness. If you got plenty of money, yeah, you're okay, you're not going to starve, you're surviving, better than most people. But like, are you happy? Like, are you fulfilled? Are you, like, is there a sense of wholeness in you? And I think a lot of really wealthy people lack that. They lack a wholeness, because they can purchase things,
They can purchase that.
It's all
happiness.
substantive. It's all material stuff, and there's just no substance under it. And maybe that just comes with age or wisdom. I don't know, but like, that's kind of the course that I saw growing up in the United States. It's pretty interesting to me. So you get to be 30 or 40 years old. Why would you surrender? If you had 3 houses and a bunch of cars, and
Right.
you weren't super happy, you don't have wholeness, but like, you're ahead of most people.
This was the point I was making earlier. The people who grew up, the popular guy, the rich person, the person who didn't have problems. What's going on? What do they have to surrender? Typically, what it is an unhappy home life. Traumatic kid trauma experience. And so this popular person's just living this facade, but they're probably oftentimes, pretty lonely. And I'm only speaking from experience. But that's what, I would say probably happens to most maybe professional athletes, or like you said, just rich people being able to buy themselves whatever they need.
Maybe that's where the term midlife crisis comes in.
Wow.
Let me ask you this, like what advice would you give, or like, how would it be able for like a multi-millionaire 40-50-year-old man, maybe he's retired, he's got tons of money, great family, like, how would you get that guy to surrender? Because he's going to just reply going, why surrender what? Look, what I've got everything, but he really doesn't have anything.
Well, I'd ask him, are you happy?
Right. Start with that.
What was your child like, or what's your relationship with your parents?
Yeah, or what's like, if there's anything missing in your life, what would it be?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Something like that.
And it would be tough to get them to open up on that, because they don't need to.
Right.
You know what I mean? They've got all this proof of success, I guess you'd call it.
But those are, thought-provoking questions, and they would incite self-thought, or,
they'd go home and think about it, even if they didn't admit it in front of you. They would definitely go home and think about it.
And sometimes that's all that you need.
Yep. Plant the seed.
Right.
And that's interesting. What we're developing here is surrender takes a fair amount of courage, to say the least. And it's about kind of like jumping off a cliff.
That's why I said there's no dipping your toe in a shallow end.
Nope.
It's all in the deep end when you do it. But it's a great feeling. I will say, like, there's a certain amount of relief that comes with it, that is probably a better feeling than Oh, 100%, not probably. It's a better feeling than holding on
No
to those
question.
grudges and to whatever it is, those egos, those problems or traumas. Absolutely, 100%. Just that
Yeah, I mean,
weight off the
what you're
shoulders.
doing is what few people are willing to do or too afraid to do, and it's definitely going to be uncomfortable and difficult in the beginning, but like over time, you start to prove to yourself your own invincibility.
Mm-hmm.
Now you start developing confidence, a deep rooted, authentic self love for yourself, and now you're really connecting with who you are, and you're okay with all of it. You know what I mean? So,
Well, it gets easier.
Yeah, because you get a firmer, like your ego is gone, and you can really appreciate the real things that matter in life. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's such a rewarding, fulfilling, tons of substance involved in it. There's value in all of that. So the journey itself builds that character. And I think, if you don't surrender and you just kind of stay in your comfort zone, you'll never have that level of invincibility and abundant feeling and confident and self-worth and all that stuff. And that's when you can truly manifest, is when you're in that zone, and your energy and your vibration is super high because you have those core foundations in you. You have your self-confidence. You did the work. You sat in the fire. You did what most people are terrified to do.
Right.
And you should really honor that and don't quit. It just keeps getting better.
Don't quit.
And now what we're kind of describing here is now you're stepping out of survival mode, and now you have the ability, you have the energy, you have the vibration
creation
to become a creator. Exactly. And now, I mean, everyone's heard the term manifestation or manifesting your dreams or whatever it is. That's what that is. You can't do it from a low vibration.
No, you have to raise your elevated emotions, raise your vibration.
And it has to be authentic. You can't fake your way into it.
And you have to do it with 100% clarity. You got to know what it is that you're changing or fixing about yourself, or whatever it is. You have to know what it is and be certain about it, that you're drawing and growing, or drawing abundance to you, or whatever it is. But just clear intention, elevated emotion, and raise your vibration, and doing such.
Yeah, and you're more, instead of your thoughts controlling you, you're now in control of your own thoughts. And that's, people overthinking that's can cripple a person's life. And imagine being in control of your thoughts every day. Now you're the painter, and you've got a blank canvas in front of you, and you can create whatever it is that you want.
What an interesting thought. Like you said, controlling your thoughts is that's a trick and a half in all in itself.
Well, I told my son this the other day. I'm like, there really is two choices. You can control your thoughts, master the art of controlling your thoughts, or you can allow your thoughts to control you, and they will eat you alive. So, to me, there's no choice, but you do have two choices. A lot of people settle for that, and that's, now you can make excuses and blame other people and do no personal responsibility, and then you'll fall into this comfort zone where you're just existing, and you'll never know creation. You're always going to be in survival, and I mean, there's just, like, you're missing out on the main essence of the human condition of life. We're all creators, and you're gonna go through your entire life missing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do. I liked that idea, or that way you put it, because just looking back in hindsight of life before, practicing controlling your own thoughts before, because I never had it put to me like that. But you're absolutely right. It's
you become the master,
right? Because when I explain it to others, I just put it like in layman's terms. It's like, this is a choice. You're choosing to dwell in this. You're choosing to continue to be sad about this, or choosing like this path. Or you could just not, but it's a lot. It's hard for some people. Sometimes, like, I'm guilty of it, where it's like, I'm upset, and I just like want to be upset, and I just don't want to like let it go upstairs, but I know that if I make that conscious thought to just let it go, it's not that big a deal or whatever, and move forward. So sometimes like that's more easy. It's easier said than done. So like you said, letting your thoughts control you, because I'm still guilty of sometimes having intrusive thoughts and being like, and then like they'll be bothersome or just gaining or then like regaining control of them. I never really thought about it in
And
such
more
a way.
importantly, they might not. They're mostly not even real or true.
Right.
Your thoughts aren't.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not even true. You know, and it's just interesting. You know, I mean, your thoughts are what's creating your reality.
Yeah.
And you know, the first question you're going to get is, okay, great. How do you control your thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now that's where you get into the inner work. That's where meditation becomes a requirement, because now the present moment, the generous present moment, is a requirement. You're required to get in touch with who you are, to become familiar with who you are. And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
Right.
And that's what makes it, in my opinion, so special. And my theory on it is that's really what the universe wants. The human race is so off track. I mean, we've got wars and bombs and drugs and dishonest, corrupt governments and evil satanic groups running the world or whatever it is. Like, the human race is so off track, and it's almost like because people are unwilling to put the effort in. Mm-hmm. You know, and that goes, in my opinion, that goes back to programming. You don't even know better.
Say, we let it happen. We let it happen through programming.
Totally.
You know, we're allowing these greater forces to just control and dictate what we learn, what we know, what we see, what we ingest, what's on media. I mean, everything. What we wear.
Consumption. Yeah.
Everything is controlled. There's the only thing you really have control over is your thoughts.
Right.
You know, should, and even if you do that.
And then the next question is okay, I've been programmed. How do I stop the program? Mm-hmm. Right? It goes hand in hand with your thoughts. Yeah. You know, your personal reality is based on your personality. That's how you think, act, and feel. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if someone, okay, smarty pants, how am I supposed to control my thoughts? How do I get, you know, I've been running these programs since I was 7 years old. How do I get rid of it? And most people just think that's who they are and they're stuck in that. Mm-hmm. And that's where meditation comes in.
Well, I was guilty of this. I made the conscious decision at one point, oh, this is it.
I'm resigned to this.
Yeah.
This is Joe.
This is what I'm going to do. And for the rest of my life, I'm going to hang sheetrock.
Yeah, let me make it work. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And those are all based on thoughts.
Right.
From a program.
Mm-hmm. And breaking down those thoughts, this is what makes this very hard. When I say certain things that I come across that I used to hold near and dear to my heart, I'm realizing these things are no longer me. And those are the days that it's like difficult. Those are the days that, you know.
And probably they were an illusion. They were what you thought they were, and they weren't even that. Right. So now you've got this emptiness going, fuck, the whole thing's a lie. Like
I've got my whole life with this. I hate this Steelers team because of whatever reason, or I don't hate the Steelers, but I'm just saying as an example, like for no reason, like for
why? That's a distraction, you know. That's the Roman circus. That's why we get fed sports games on the weekends.
Yeah, and it's like letting go to those things. Like I don't skate nearly as often, not something near and dear to my heart, but it's just no longer pragmatic for my life.
And it's not really part of your identity at this current state in your life. It's not. You're not defined as a skater. That was a role.
Right.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I'm in the same boat. I'm guilty of it too. I mean, I was a surfer, and I loved my lifestyle, and I still think it's a great lifestyle. But like, that's not who I am anymore. I'll still surf. I love to surf. I love the ocean. But like, that's not who I define who I am anymore.
Right.
Like, I don't even care to dress like. I don't want people to even know that I'm affiliated with that, you know.
So the thing is during this situation, during this process, you know, you kind of go through quite a bit of time figuring out who it is you are. You go through this state of being where it's like, what am I? Who am I? What are these? Letting go of these things, letting go of that. Like,
so where would you start?
Oh Well, where I started, I
Like
because
if
that's
you
all that I
wanted
could
to,
speak
to
about.
really like create a new Joe, it would obviously require getting in touch with who you are, and like that's finding out your passions and what your purpose now becomes
Yeah,
more important. Like
that's what I would say.
to answer my own question, and I think I did this to you. I usually like when people are kind of on the fringe of looking for some solution
Yeah,
to unstick themselves. I always start with this: if you had unlimited time, unlimited money, unlimited resources, where would you be and what would you be doing? And most people cannot answer that question.
right. I know what I would be doing now. The day you asked me, I don't know. I didn't
Right.
know. I had no idea.
That's the first step. Like how do you create something if you don't know what it is?
But I know what it is now.
You got to get in tune with who you are.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't want to be an accountant. I
Mhm.
know that. You know what I mean? And I love surfing and stuff like that, but like I think there's a different purpose for me, and I think it's more about serving my community, something more purposeful for like healing myself, healing my family, connecting and unifying the human race on a much more substantive and conscious level. You know, those are powerful things to me, and in my opinion, like what else is there? Like what's more important than that? Because when you attain that, you can be a good artist, a good skater. You can still do all of that, but like the wholeness and the fulfillment you get out of that, um, you know, if you were to meet me 20, 10, even 10 years ago, none of this was in my scope. If somebody would have said, oh, Robert's going to be, I don't know, a healer or, serve his community and get into quantum.
Spiritual mentor.
Yeah, or into consciousness and science and spirituality. I mean, I didn't study that in school. I had no interest in it. And like we said in the last podcast, it just kind of chose me because I surrendered that old pseudo identity, and it's almost like the universe just threw it in my lap, going, "Well, this is a little bit more purposeful. Why don't you dabble in this?"
Yeah.
And I just kind of went down the hole, and I just started reading, became the alchemist. I started practicing things and experimenting, and tons of meditations, tons of reading, tons of research on things I never ever like had any interest in 20 years ago, and it's just, I'm grateful and I'm glad I did that. If I was the old me and didn't surrender, I would have turned it all down,
Right.
out of fear or something. I don't know science.
Judgment.
I'm not smart enough to understand quantum physics, but I just surrendered that whole belief system that I had. And it was kind of at a point in my life where I wouldn't call it rock bottom, but it was at least in the parking garage.
So you would say it was pretty scary time.
It was. I mean, it was where, like, I could have lost my kids. I could have lost my my job, my family. I won't go into it, but like,
Right.
I had nowhere to go, and at some point I just stopped and went, give up, man. What you're doing or trying to do hasn't worked, and it isn't going to work in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went, take me,
Yep.
And I have no regrets from that point on. I became just a better thinker, more intelligent, more centered, absolutely more conscious, more aware of what's going on in the world. I see my reality's different.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it's like I can't put a value on it. It's just, to me, all there is.
I agree.
Everything else follows. You want to take trips to Egypt or go surfing here, that you got that at your fingertips now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, information.
And you're not struggling anymore. And not to dominate society, but you go out in public and stuff, and like I don't even really want to engage anymore. Not that I'm above anybody, but like I want to surround myself with like-minded people, intelligent people,
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger, I
I'm trying to sit at
compromised.
bigger tables, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I would hang out with losers and drunks in bars and stuff. I didn't really discern or pick or choose, and now it's like, um, just like you said, I'd rather sit at a table with Billy Carson and
Yep.
Joe Dispenza.
Same.
And money has nothing to do with it. It's just the energy involved in that.
Do a meditation, in the middle of
Yeah,
the pyramid.
and I think that takes courage, And the other thing I want to be clear on with surrender, that doesn't make Joe and I wimps. Like, we both have boundaries, and
Right.
we hold to those. We don't cave. We don't get steamrolled. And it's kind of
Unwavering self-worth.
that's right. If you love yourself enough, I like to use the term peaceful warrior.
Yes. Be a warrior in a garden.
Great book by Dan Millman, by the way. One of the first books I ever read about this stuff was called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, by Dan Millman, and it changed my life. But I was just too polluted and dumb, to really let it soak in. But it did hit a few notes. I was probably 22 when I read that.
Yeah.
And just, oh, this is really cool, and then just moved on in my programs and in my ego, But the seed was planted, and I'm as loving, peaceful a person as it is, but like, don't fuck with me,
Exactly.
I don't use violence or anything like that, but I'll walk away, or I just don't engage. So it's not about caving. Surrender is not about caving in. It's not about being a wimp. It's the opposite. Surrender is total warrior, courageous thing to do, and that's part of why most people don't want anything to do with it.
Right, and it's frowned upon because it goes against society's indoctrinating. It goes
especially with men.
Especially with men. We're
not supposed to have feelings.
Exactly.
Right.
And we're not supposed to express them. We're not supposed to be even just consciously aware of who we are and what we do, because if we all became conscious of what we were and what we are, a lot of us are going to find out that a lot of people are really ugly. And if that can incite change, then we would have a better society altogether, and then it wouldn't. But the government, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole, is keeping us held back intentionally. This is all just a huge program.
Yeah, it's a global weakening.
It's a global weakening.
They're absolutely hitting the male figures first, because those are the men, So
yeah, they say the quiet man is the strong man,
Right.
So if you got these people out here who are controlling and barking up a storm everywhere, they're just trying to keep us weak, like you said, a global weakening, and such as just be. It doesn't make you weak at all. Like to surrender.
I think it's the opposite.
I think it's the opposite too, because to stand out against the crowd and to do this work in just for the betterment of yourself. I mean, there is no other strength.
What else is there?
What else is there?
Yeah. And I think when you do that and you keep your mouth shut, this is it's a solo journey. It's a very inner, private journey, and you just do that and you keep your mouth shut. The people around you, or the people that know you, there's a curiosity that starts to develop, because you're setting a different example, and that's really how you change people, because you can't talk people into anything. You have to become an example with tangible evidence. Like, your life starts to becoming, but you're creating exactly what you want in your life, and the people around you are going, how's he doing?
Yeah, what's he doing?
Exactly. And then they come to you, and now you don't have to solicit any information or get called a cosmic debris or a conspiracy theorist or anything like that.
Conspiracy theorist.
And it's not your responsibility to change another person. It's them. But like, the more people out there become examples of this, the more curious I think other people that are unwilling, to admit anything, they start to become curious to see how you're changing your life, and that's kind of how you heal other people and affect the other people or the masses.
Right, I agree completely, and that, I think, is the most profound part of this entire thing is once we can unify and change the masses on this like spiritual level of everybody, if everybody's surrounded, just that thought, or surrendered, excuse me, just that thought, I mean, everything would change.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that question, because we're about to wrap up this tonight's episode. My question hypothetically to you was, what would it be like, the goal, the universal goal is unity. That's what the universe is based on. Imagine, or hypothetically, if we could collectively get a multitude of humans to surrender concurrently, or at the same time, or right around the same time, what do you think would change, just on the globe?
I think everything. Government would fall immediately. It would come crashing down, I think.
I think unity is only possible with that.
Yes, I agree.
When the people unify, just like Moose said, governments are gone. The oil companies are gone. BlackRock's gone. All those evil empires that are programming and running all the humans, they're gone within like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah,
all it takes is unity.
Everything falls apart, and then I think real health starts to change, real positive growth, real life on global scales, where everything just absolutely 100% changes. It would take away sickness. It would take away
everyone would be much physically much healthier, but when you surrender, again, it's centered around the ego. There wouldn't be any wars. There wouldn't be any borders. You know what I mean?
There'd be no racism. There would be no prejudice. There would be none of this.
Right. Like, whoever's running the world, whether it's BlackRock, Vanguard, the media companies, evil Illuminatis, like they just simply couldn't exist.
Right.
That's it comes across as simple. Yeah, let's all just unify. Mm-hmm. But it takes all these other components: surrender, consciousness, the present moment, meditation. But I think it's just interesting to think about, like, how quickly things could turn around on this planet. Like, you start caring about the oceans, you start caring about the forests. Yeah, I mean, money wouldn't be the same as it is now.
Money's the worst. You wake up and need it.
All everyone thinks about.
That's all you think about. Every minute, every move you make is based on making money or spending money,
or being wealthier than some other person.
It's just
it's
terrible.
A rat race.
Yeah.
And all that just kind of crumbles and falls away. Mm-hmm. In theory, easier said than done, but all you guys out there, we appreciate you guys listening, and we felt that surrender was a key component, to help incite or elicit change on this beautiful earth of ours, and
remain vulnerable.
That's right. Stay vulnerable, and just remember, unification of the human race. Unity is what the universe craves. Order. It's trying to put everything in order, and that's what the universe is waiting on. That changes the globe, and it changes it within a month or less. Religions are gone. They're gone in a day. Mm-hmm. And religions have been suffocating the people. This is my opinion.
Mine as well.
Since time began, it's just a strangulation of humanity, and all of that stuff just crumbles and dissolves.
Yeah.
And Moose and I felt that surrender is a key component. There's more to it. It's imagine a puzzle in front of you with 1,000 pieces. In order to have this happen, you got to have all the pieces,
right,
and you have to put them all in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these components are required, and we here at Catharsis absolutely believe that surrender is one of those key puzzle pieces.
It's the first piece,
right? All right, everybody. That's it for us tonight. We hope everyone's doing well. We love everybody out there.
Have a good night.
You know how it goes. As above,
so below.
Peace.